First question of the interview is, what is your history with Scooby Doo and what does it mean to you?
Scooby Doo. I've it's like that one TV series that I've always like cherished as a kid. Like everybody had SpongeBob. Like I wasn't allowed to watch the Nick Channel when I was younger, so I only really watched Cartoon Network. And in South America, we still had Boomerang. So like the old Scooby Doo stuff, you still like be on that at all times, all the time. I always were a big fan of monsters and monsters. A lot of times I just watched episodes based on the monster if I liked it. Like my favorite Scooby Doo movie for a while was the Loch Ness Monster one because it's just a fucking Loch Ness monster. There's like 3 Loch Ness monsters, and at the end of the movie they have like a oh what if the Loch Ness monster was real moment, which is kind of cool.
Scooby Doo is a very old and interesting franchise to look into. The history not only behind the original run of the show, but between all of its incarnations that we've seen in the past 52 years show how enduring and timeless the show is. Whether you enjoyed the classic run, What's New Scooby-Doo, the 2000s live-action movies, Mystery Incorporated, or even the consistently released direct-to-video movies, there's something in it for everyone. If you like something, there is something to find in the Scooby-Doo movies. And as poorly as that is, anyone who's watched these movies can preach to that. You want witches? We got it. You want Australian monsters? We got it. You want John Cena? We got it. And honestly, there's just so much to love about the franchise, and when you look at it all, it's just absolutely incredible that it has lasted as long as it has. In fact, some of my earliest and most happiest memories as a kid were me watching and enjoying the original series alongside What's New Scooby-Doo. I was there watching the Scooby Bowl on Cartoon Network where they aired a bunch of Scooby-Doo movies. Like, does anyone else remember that? It was awesome. I even remember once they had an actual Scooby costume where he was dressed up as a football player, to break in between the movies. It was so awesome. Like, even as an adult now, that it blows my mind that that they went ahead and did those little details for those little bumpers. And once again, this goes to show how big and iconic that this series is, that I was able to remember something as minor as a TV show bumper for what was supposed to be kids' distraction during the Super Bowl. And I even remember owning a bunch of the ones on VHS, and at this point I'm just rambling, but it goes to show how passionate I am and how passionate some other people are, because I've spoken to other people and other friends and they've reported having similar experiences of doing it. I mean, hell, I loved Scooby-Doo to the point where half the reason I used to own Verve was to watch and marathon all of the Scooby-Doo content they had on it. And it's understandable why there's so much widespread appeal, as it's literally been absorbed into almost every single medium that it could have been. I mean, we're talking about comics, movies, books, and on topic with today's video games, as we will be reviewing the first in the THQ and Heavy Iron Studios Scooby-Doo trilogy, Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights. Last year, I went on a journey down a rabbit hole of the Scooby-Doo franchise due to the free time I suddenly had. And going down that rabbit hole, I ended up coming back to one of the best things, I'd have to say, about my childhood, which was the Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights game. And while scrounging through for this game, because I actually still have the physical hard case of it, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show it in the video, because I know it's weird, but upon finding it and realizing I had actually lost the disc in the times that I've moved in and out of different houses, I realized that I was either going to have to cough up a few bucks, or I was going to have to do the one thing I never thought I would stoop to: emulate a game. Now, at the time, I was tight on cash, and apparently my GameCube cables were messed up, so this was the only thing I could do. And the thing is, it had been almost a decade since I had played this game, so I was desperate, guys, and I really wanted to do it. And upon finally installing Dolphin, getting a actually working GameCube adapter, because heads up, you need a specific GameCube adapter for Dolphin to even work, I came to a how should I say this? A nostalgic moment as upon loading up and playing the game once more and hearing all those classics, cutscenes, and all those classic tracks, and even the gameplay itself. It was at that moment that I had realized that I not only wanted to 100% this game, but I also wanted to make a video dissecting it. And the reason for that is just because I absolutely adore this game so much. I love it to death. The atmosphere, the music, the sound effects even. It's all absolutely perfect in a sense. And I want to just spread my love for this game. And judging by some of the comments I've seen on the Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated tweets and videos last year, I'm not the only one who wants to see this game not only come back and get re-released, but also get the rehydrated treatment. So not only is the purpose of this video for me kind of a therapy in a sense of me finally getting to release my love for this game, it's also kind of a cry for help in a sense that I really want to see this game at least get re-released because it has not been. It has been stuck on the GameCube and PlayStation 2 for at this point almost over a decade. Or actually, now that I think about it, oh my god, I'm old, but yeah, it has been that long, and a game like this should not be restricted to such old hardware, especially at the fact that it looks absolutely fantastic on PC, and I'm really hoping that this video can just somehow go viral, and then maybe it can catch the attentions of some bigwigs, and the talking can start, but at that point, who knows. But I want to start talking about the game's background. There really isn't much I can say on it, as this game's development seems like it generally went by smoothly, as I really couldn't find much behind the scenes stuff. Besides some pre-release footage that shows the game actually made some really drastic changes months before release, and maybe some leftover assets in the game's code, some of which we will be mentioning, as some of the changes that were left out are somewhat drastic and kinda hint at something greater. Also, at this point, I have to bring up the company's name, as it might be familiar to some of you, and for good reason. This is the same company who put out games like the SpongeBob movie game, Ratatouille, and this is gonna be one that's a bit familiar, Battle for Bikini Bottom. Yeah, this company is responsible for loads of games that many people would consider to be cult classics these days, and as the game goes on, I think you'll understand why this is, and why I felt a need to go ahead and interrupt my schedule in a sense to review this game, and even take a year to review this game in its entirety. It is a game that is absolutely near and dear to me, and I really wanted to make sure that I did the game justice in my review. It just took me that long to revise this script. But what is Scooby Doo Night of 100 Frights? Well, it's a 3D collect-a-thon action platformer similar to Battle for Bikini Bottom. It began development around February of 2001 and eventually came out on May 22nd, 2002 for the PlayStation 2, original Xbox, and the GameCube. Later on in 2003, it was re-released as a bestseller for the PlayStation 2. The general consensus on the game at the time was that it's average. It most of the time got 3 out of 5 stars from most outlets and was rarely reviewed negatively. Of course, nowadays, as people like me grew up and get nostalgic for the game, we really begin to wonder, was it just good? Or was it better in retrospect than we gave it credit for? And that's what I'm here to see. Just like the Sonic Retrospective videos, we will be reviewing the journey that one takes throughout the game, step by step, level by level, and analyzing every single bit of it along the way. So that means we're gonna be in for quite the long ride, folks. Also, final disclaimer before we start as well, I am not rich or smart enough to use my original GameCube for the footage that will be used in this video, so I will be using an emulator. So any issues that are not found in the original release and only in the emulator version, any complaints I make, just make those void if you know those aren't present in the original release. And also, spoiler alert, like I said, we are going to be going through this piece by piece, bit by bit, so if you really want to play this game, just pause the video, go get Dolphin, hook up your Mayflash GameCube controller adapter, and get started, because the game's actually quite fun and not that long. So you could just go ahead and do that and come back, and we can experience this again together. But with that all out of the way, let's finally see if Scooby Doo Night of 100 Frights truly deserves to be remade and re-released. So, to start off with, I just want to talk about this game's absolutely awesome intro cinematic and startup menu, as they really went above and beyond in terms of designing and creating this. The intro to the game is a shot-for-shot replica of the original Scooby-Doo intro with a few minor tweaks to match with the game's story, and shows what the game's overall theme is trying to do. It's trying to replicate and be like those early Scooby-Doo seasons. Even the game's start screen resembles one of the title cards from the original series, and even without starting the game, we already know the tone and intentions of what the developers were trying to do with this game, which is pretty cool to me and shows the dedication to the theme that the developers had going for this game. Another cool thing I want to bring up is the select screen. Yes, the menu select screen is actually the back of the Mystery Machine and shows all this cool tech that the gang has in the back of the van. Not to mention, it's a clear reference and homage to how the van looked in episode 4 of the original series, which is a really cool detail that once again shows the dedication the developers had when making this game. In addition to the basic settings as well, we also get neat trailers for stuff that was coming out at the time. Like, for example, this neat trailer for the live-action Scooby-Doo movie, which is really awesome, and it's a cool time capsule to the era itself that the game came out in. But, enough rambling on the details. Let's get into the actual game itself. The game itself starts off with the gang driving to another location as they're there to assist Daphne's friend Holly in solving the strange goings-on at Mystic Manor and the surrounding village. From there we get the basic introduction of Holly and the revelation that her uncle Alexander Graham disappeared right as he was about to unveil a grand new invention, and nobody around the area will help her search for him as apparently the area is haunted, much to Shaggy's annoyance. And after Scooby and Shaggy convince the gang to let them stay near the van as the others go off into the manor, right as they leave, Shaggy's stomach starts rumbling as it usually does, and he finds a box of Scooby snacks randomly attached to this tree branch, which he tries to rip off, despite Scooby-Doo rightfully telling him that something seems off about that. Shaggy, being the idiot he is, ignores him. He gets the box pulled, only to reveal a collapsible hole in the ground right beneath him, and he falls down, leaving Scooby-Doo all alone in the manor courtyard. And this is where the main gameplay begins, and let me say, it is the perfect introduction that would pretty much spike fear into any young child. The reason I say this is because it sets up the atmosphere and feeling of how the first quarter of the game feels. It is about the feeling of isolation and being helpless, because not only is Scooby-Doo all alone, but because of what we just saw happen to Shaggy, we know there's something up, and something could also happen to the gang. And the music of the main hub area does a fantastic job with this, as you just hear screeches of animals and unknown creatures in the night, alongside some classic horror instruments that over time turn into a nice, slow melody. Here, just take a listen. It is beautiful. And alongside this fantastic soundtrack, you're thrown right into the courtyard, and this will be the main hub area as it connects to 3 out of 4 of the primary section. However, don't be deceived by the fact that there's only 4 sections in the game, as the areas within each section vary heavily. For example, in the Hedge section alone, there is greenhouses, mountains, cliffs, underground caverns, and a gigantic fucking graveyard. There is loads of variety in each of the levels, so don't expect to even get bored of anything in your surroundings, as there's always something different to differentiate each area. And I'm just here stumbling on my words, but I am not kidding. This is a gigantic game, and you guys are going to see that as we go along. Getting back to the gameplay, this area introduces you to the main collectible of the game. I mean, it's Scooby Snacks. What else would it be? These are the main collectibles that you'll need to unlock progression in order to reach certain areas of the game through these things called snack gates that require you to give up a certain amount of snacks to move forward. Collecting all the snacks in the area also unlocks some concept art in the monster gallery, a portion of the game which we'll actually come back to later as it's not really relevant at the moment. Also, it's here we're introduced to the warp gate mechanic. They pretty much act as fast travel points throughout the game and actually introduce you to the whole entire map once you look inside of them. They also allow you to easily backtrack to any area in the game, which is absolutely fantastic. This is a feature that is pretty much a standard, but it wasn't exactly at the time, and the fact they even included this is really awesome. It really makes the game all that much more enjoyable. Anyway, as you walk around, you quickly realize that pretty much every area is blocked off either by snack gates or locks, and you pretty much have to obviously find a key to unlock them. And there's just one left, actually, and it's completely unlocked and you are given the prompt to enter it. It's a nice, calm playground with slides, swing sets, even an ice rink. And what's that? I'm no longer hearing the spooky tune that we were hearing in the overworld. It's instead replaced by a happy and cheerful one, and there's not even a single enemy in sight. This tiny little isolated area is the Mystic Playground, which not only acts as the tutorial of the game, but it also kind of acts like your safe room, and in my opinion, it kind of feels like it was meant to soothe the nerves of those who are genuinely scared or worried about the journey ahead, and for those, it does a great job, as it's not only fun to explore the area and get the Scooby Snacks, and the thing is, the game doesn't even really hold your hand through the tutorial. It offers you the chance to figure all of it out as you try to get all the Scooby Snacks, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Sure, if you really were having trouble, you can just walk into one of these handy-dandy hourglasses and you'll be fine, but no, you are actually allowed to explore and figure everything out on your own, which is absolutely fantastic, especially for a children's game of all things. Most children's game would be very, very handholdy, where you would have someone explaining every single aspect of the tutorial to you, but no, this game realizes that you're smart enough to figure these things out on your own, and that's absolutely awesome. It's a small little detail that just absolutely changes how I view the game. It's also here you learn what your health items are and how your health bar works. They pretty much function as food equals health. It's that simple, and when Scooby-Doo runs low on food, he gets scared and I guess has a heart attack. I don't exactly know. It's just him screaming help, which honestly is kind of disturbing. But anyway, you basically learn everything you need to know in this section. You even learn how to save your game in the form of these mystery machine icons around the map. They even find a nice and natural way to incorporate and introduce the player to the tar hazard in the form of this secluded sandbox that teaches you exactly how it works by simply walking on it. This area also introduces the player to monster tokens, a concept that we will once again get back to later, but we collect them nonetheless. This is genuinely one of my favorite tutorial areas of all time, and I remember as a kid I spent so much time having fun in this area and just coming back constantly throughout the game even though I never needed to do so. It's just a really nice and enjoyable area where you can just literally mess around and get used to the game's physics. It's a really, really fun area, and it's a shame that this is the only one like it, but you know what? I'll take it for what it is. It is absolutely fun. It respects the player's intelligence when it comes to teaching them all of these basic gameplay mechanics. It is glorious. I love it. After wrapping up your time in the playground, you are free to leave and finally face the challenges that lie ahead. And using the snacks that we collected in there, we're actually able to open our first snack gate. Once again, teaching the player how these mechanics work almost naturally in a sense, where, hey, if you have a certain amount of snacks, the snack gate requires snacks, just go up to it, boom, snack gate open. It's that simple. And it's also here we finally get to enter the mansion itself. Yes, the whole heading of the game. And upon entering, we get a close-up of a key on a platform, and we hear Holly in the distance calling out for assistance. The inside of the manor is pretty much set up how you would imagine your typical old-school Scooby-Doo haunted house would look like. And it's also worth mentioning that the paintings not only move, but are pictures of old Scooby-Doo villains, which is pretty strange and really brings your curiosity as to why they're there. Upon actually obtaining the skull key highlighted in the intro to the manor, we actually find out it's for the door where Holly is screaming from, and upon opening it, bats flurry out and Holly's there, and she tells us Shaggy isn't the only one who's missing, as apparently upon entering the actual manor itself, a ghoul called the Mastermind appeared, revealing himself to be the one responsible for all the weirdness and all the terrible things going around the manor, including the disappearance of the professor, and he apparently just poofed the whole gang out while he was there, leaving only Holly. She then gives us a map of the whole entire area, and we continue our journey along into the mansion. Upon entering the next area, we come in. What the? Professor, there's a gigantic smoking hole in your house, man. And the thing is, when we later walk onto the floor in the room, it just collapses right underneath us. And apparently, these spider webs are so strong, we need a helmet invention to destroy them. What the hell is going on with this man's house? So, apparently, according to the game manual, which I actually still have, I probably have to look it up in order to, get the actual quotes for it, or maybe I'll just scan it. But according to the manual itself, the professor has been so preoccupied with inventing that he hasn't taken care at all of his house, which, holy shit, man. Really? When was the last time you sent the Roomba out? Because this place is literally falling apart as we roam around. And it's not like this house has, been abandoned. No, people still live in it. The manual says so. So why is it that this house has not yet been deemed a safety hazard? Or how has none of his, people come up to the house, said, yo, man, you probably need to fix this? It's just, it's weird. And you know what? The manual probably just explains this off as well, as the recent hauntings has caused the entire village to just GTFO. But it's still weird. I get it. It's for gameplay design. It's to make it really fun and interesting environments. But holy shit, the more you think about it, it's like, bruh. But terrible home care aside, the spiderweb is pretty much indestructible for whatever reason, and we can't proceed from this point onward without the helmet invention. So obviously that means that we have to come back when we eventually get it, and there's nothing else we can do in the mansion, so we just gotta head on out and... Whoa, who's that? It's an NPC. Oh, it's Don Knotts! Alright, he's in this game. So for those of you who don't know who Don Knotts is, he's an American actor most well known for his roles in The Andy Griffin Show and Three's a Company. So why is Mr. Knotts here? Kinda seems random if that's all you know him from. Well, actually, he's pretty integral to, the old Scooby-Doo stuff, and he actually appeared twice in the new Scooby-Doo movies, playing a literal parody of himself. So, he is just super ingrained into the franchise, so much so that for the first draft of the original James Gunn live-action Scooby-Doo movie, he was written to be the main culprit, and actually had a cameo as a tourist in the first episode of the Mystery Inc. reboot, so it's actually pretty cool that he's here. And as a result, he's here not only in model and name, but in voice too. And while I can't tell if he's playing a parody of one of his roles in this game, because, my lord, that man has a huge filmography and I do not have the time to look through it all, he's pretty funny whenever you get near him, as he'll be cracking snarky comments and jokes, and on the occasion, he'll actually help you out. For example, in the situation we're in right now, he tells us that the key to the fishing village is buried around the courtyard somewhere, and since he doesn't want to go out searching for it, he just gives us the shovel and gives us our first upgrade as a result. With this upgrade, you are allowed to dig at any specified spot and dig up whatever lies there, whether it's a collectible, a snack, or, a literal snack. it's there, and you just gotta dig it up. And while we're at the courtyard, actually, we see another key floating above just one of the flowers, which is intriguing as we can't reach it currently because Scooby-Doo just doesn't have the basketball hops he used to, which is pretty important to note for later, as we just keep digging and, oh, there it is. It's the key, like I said. Now, we use this key to go ahead and unlock the gate to the fishing village and take our first steps in there, and oh my... Okay, Professor, I know you had an excuse in the fact that you were just careless with your home, but why? Why is the fishing village like this? It's pretty dangerous to have holes in your pier, especially since it's right next to the sea, with rampant waves clearly hitting the docks. And in fact, looking around at how some of the barrels and obstacles are placed, it kind of looks like they were defensive barricades, which could imply that maybe the pier is broken as a result of the villagers trying to defend themselves and stop the monsters from progressing outside of the actual village itself, as in the manual it states that the villagers just got out as fast as they could as soon as the monsters started getting around, which just implies so much about the things that these villagers went through, that they were so scared that they were willing to blow up their own home and own industries to stop the monster from getting to them, which is so cool and scary and disturbing. And while I might be thinking too much into it, it's a perfectly logical explanation as to why the pier is this way. And I'm starting on my words, but it's just such an interesting concept that you could grab from simple things as the level layout. And I love it. I love it. It may have not been intentional, but I just absolutely love how this is potentially storytelling through level design. But as we progress further down, we find out that nature is slowly taking back some of the dock as we find fish and rats absolutely everywhere. And we make our way into the next section where we find Shaggy. Bruh, where have you been? Yeah, we meet Shaggy this early on in the game, which kind of conflicts with the whole entire thing that I just set up earlier, and that the game set up earlier, where it's you, Scooby, you have to solve the mystery, since literal minutes after we witness Shaggy get swallowed up by the void, he's just here, literally hanging around. And the worst part is that after we solve the puzzle that he's involved with, he just decides to stay behind and say he'll catch up with us later, which is like, Shaggy, my dude, this evil mastermind dude has kidnapped the entire gang, and somehow you escaped, and I don't think splitting up is the best choice here, but we can't do much about it. I'm not going to argue with game design, and we make our way to the next checkpoint and find another snack gate, and a hint that there's actually more to the fishing village, as there's an entryway blocked by tar and some barrels, meaning we can't reach it at this point, but we'll just come back to that later. But after paying up to the snack gate, we make our way to the ship docks, where we're not only introduced to two new enemies in the form of the crab, which is pretty funny, but also the ghost of Captain Cutler, which, fun fact, the boat we arrive into this section is actually from the Captain Cutler episode when you look at it closely, which once again shows the dedication they had to really replicating the old school Scooby-Doo cartoons in this game, which once again I just absolutely love. But towards the end of this section of the level, we get our second upgrade, which is the spring jump, or in layman's terms, the double jump. And if you'll recall correctly, there's a certain key in the courtyard which we actually needed more height to get. Thus, if we can put two and two together, we can make our way back to the courtyard, and shebang, we just got the key. And alongside that, at this point, we should have collected enough snacks to open up our second snack gate in the courtyard, which was the Monster Gallery entrance. And before we get into what the Monster Gallery is, I really want to bring up something intriguing about the game, and that it is a very clearly inspired Metrovania game, as we find ourselves constantly traversing new areas to find upgrades and doohickeys and grab Scooby snacks, where we can backtrack and open up new areas or access things that were previously inaccessible, which is really cool. It really gives off that kind of Symphony of the Night feeling, where now that you have this upgrade, you are able to make it into this new area. It really adds to the sense of progression and power that you get as the game goes on. But getting back to the Monster Gallery for now, the Monster Gallery basically acts like a model viewer and a nice trivia place if you want to learn about the monsters that appear in the game, as once you collect their respective tokens, you're able to view their models and their trivia in this area. It's also here that you're able to view things such as cinematics and concept art. Also, fun fact, the information for the Wolfman and the Green Ghost tokens are actually incorrect, kind of, as the Wolfman one lists the wrong appearance, as while yes, a Wolfman appeared in the episode specified, it's the wrong one that this model isn't based off of, and is actually based on a later Wolfman, and the Green Ghost is incorrectly stated to come from a pup named Scooby Doo as its origin, when in reality it comes from an episode of the original series. Also, some minor things like them incorrectly labeling Captain Cutler's ghost as Ghost Diver or naming Charlie Robots the Funland Robot, which in a sense kind of makes sense, but at the same time they slightly bother me. I'm not sure why they bother changing the names. Maybe it's just for simplicity's sake, but it's just those little things that you notice over time as you collect these tokens. Regardless of all those little inconsistencies and errors, I really do enjoy this area as it is fantastic. I mean, I remember my younger self coming back here and just looking at all the trivia for the monsters I had not seen yet in the show, and sometimes wondering, hey, where is so-and-so monster and why aren't they here? And I actually remember finding the Green Ghost inconsistency myself, because even as a kid I was confused, because I actually did watch Pup Named Scooby-Doo and the original series growing up, so it kind of always threw me for a loop and made me wonder, is everything in here correct? But aside from that, it's also really cool because you get to look at the concept art. I mean, I'm going to be putting it up on screen anyway, but it's really cool to look at what the developers were going for in these areas. And sometimes the concept art highlights things that we may or may not have seen in the game itself. And it's always really cool when the developers include little incentives for this, as the way you get the concept art is by 100%ing all the snacks in one area. And to me, that just adds excellent incentive to once again return to those previous areas that you have already been in. It's just fantastic and adds so much replayability to all the areas in the game. But with the key to the Hedge Maze in hand, and with every other area we have gone for fully explored, we only have one place left to go. That's right, the Hedge Maze. And that is where the first real big section of the game waits for us. So the reason I call the Hedge Maze area our first real section of the game is because in the mansion and in the fishing village, we only touch upon the first two levels/sections of the area before moving on and leaving, but here we actually go through about 50% of the area before being done with it. And it's in this area where the game essentially takes off your training wheels. The last two areas were solely warm-ups, so that way you could get used to the game's physics engine and how the game feels, alongside giving you the basic upgrades you'll need to survive. And it's here where the game stops holding your hand and essentially starts throwing out what you'll be seeing for the rest of the game. And it's upon entering this area that we find a locked gate, which is locked from the other side, essentially implanting a curiosity into the player, making them wonder, what will I go through before I find my way to the other side of this gate, pretty much hyping up the rest of the area. The Hedge Maze itself is a wonderful area, as it really does set a nice mystique and eerie atmosphere, and even the holes in the ground have some form of justification, as nearby some of the pits you can actually see shovels impaled into the dirt, once implying that someone had to have done this, adding once again to the mystique and mystery of the area. This atmosphere is even more reinforced by the sudden jump scares enemies will make as they pop out of hiding spots and sometimes even chase after the player, giving an even greater source of paranoia. And while we're on the topic of monsters jump scaring the player, this lets us move on to the next upgrade of our adventure, the Slippers and Lampshade, which arguably is the worst and most situational upgrade that you get during the game, as all it does is turn you invisible to the monster's sightlines while standing still while using this ability, and allows you to avoid triggering the jump scares I just mentioned, which, while looking funny, isn't really all that practical, as most jump scares can be solved by either running away or stunning the monster and then running away. But I guess it's there once again to avoid giving some of the younger players constant anxiety attacks as these monsters pop out of urns and bushes. I'm also under the assumption that this was possibly also meant to be a clutch item, as you could probably sneak past a lot of monsters simply by using this when on low health, so in some cases I guess I can see its worth, but for the most part, like I said, it is almost useless. It's also here, however, that I want to file my first complaint about the game, as it becomes really abundant the more you play through it, which is the reuse of music tracks. For example, in the second part of the Hedge Maze, they reuse the theme of the Mystic Manor Courtyard, and while, as I already said, it's a great theme, I feel like something like that should be reused lightly, if not at all, because one of the best parts of video games in general are that the music in each area and how it's used to bring it to life. And reusing the tracks takes away from the uniqueness of them. And while, yes, the reused tracks do work for the most part, and I would not be lying to say that some of the themes of the game start to get repetitive, and if the game someday does get remade, I would definitely hope to see the music team make some new tracks so that the areas can have a more unique feel to them. But to be honest, the music in this game is just awesome. While I have lightly touched on it with the parts from the Courtyard before, this game's music is just overall really well done and well made, to be honest, because it really does capture that early Scooby-Doo feel and kind of giving like a oldie 70s type of vibe, if you guys catch my drift. It's kind of hard to explain, but in general, it does a really good job at capturing the atmosphere of Scooby-Doo and the type of music they use in the background of some of those earlier episodes. It's really awesome, and I would highly suggest giving the soundtrack a listen to, as there are some major bangers in there. And after a fun little tractor platforming section, we reach the next change of scenery, which is the greenhouse. We enter to find this place a complete wreck with rats and poisonous piranha plant wannabes and loads of other enemies as you make your way through, only to realize that this section of the level is disappointingly short before we end up going back to the Hedge Maze garden aesthetic. Which kinda sucks, as it's not like it's an issue of the size of the building, because as we'll find out in the next few sections, the size of the building is not any issue. And it's probably due to the fact how they wanted the greenhouse section to more smoothly transition into the cliffs and mountains section of this area, which, while I understand that intention, still disappoints me because the greenhouse section is just so limited in what it had, when its potential could have been so much bigger and better. Because, I mean, think about it, we could have had a goddamn what is that one movie? I'm doing this on the fly right now, but it's that one movie with the talking plant that sings at the end of the movie. We could have had references to that, and the professor alone could have had things like monstrous plant vines completely out of control, things like that. The fucking greenhouse, I'm sorry, I'm winging this right now, but the greenhouse aesthetic could have been so much more, and could have been so much cooler, but they did not dedicate enough time to this one section, which kinda sucks. And once you make it past the greenhouse in the last few Hedge Maze sections, you finally make it to the mountains and cliffs area of this level. Now, as a kid, viewing this specific area was awesome because you got to see this gigantic, huge, colossal, imposing mountain, and you knew you had to climb it because something good had to have been at the top of that mountain. And unfortunately, there's a pattern here, as, once again, this section is extremely short, and right as you're climbing this mountain and you're feeling the epicness of scaling it, it's over and you're already at the peak, which sucks, because this is really a common issue with the game, is that sometimes some of the cooler areas that they could have expanded on are just way too short. And the thing is, I understand it's not that long of a game, and obviously the length of a game does not dictate how good it is, as even when you look up some of the long plays of this game, they average out about 4 to 6 hours, which is fine, but it certainly leaves me wanting more as an adult replaying this. But getting back to the actual layout of the area, it's quite nice actually, as upon entering and passing this danger sign guarded by a witch, we climb down to see a gate for an area, once again, that requires us to have a late game ability to enter. Another nice detail is that you can actually see the mansion in the background, which once again does some nice world building as you see how the surrounding areas circle around the mansion and how they're kind of positioned around it. It's really nice, and you can really get a really good layout for how everything is laid out through this, three-dimensional wise. Obviously we have the map, but you can get a good kind of perspective of how the mansion is laid out. Retreating from the cliffs and finally getting to climb the mighty mountain, as we reach the peak, our next upgrade awaits us. The football helmet, which turns our ability to headbutt and stun enemies into the ability to kill them and get rid of them permanently. Like, Jesus, Professor, how hard is this helmet hitting where it just straight up murders whatever it headbutts? Like, holy shit. And it's actually upon scaling the mountain downwards that we realize the real side purpose to this helmet and the real reason why we came here. As we encounter a gigantic cobweb that we realize, oh wait, we can break this now that our headbutt is stronger. And once we do, we break it, and it turns out to be a shortcut. Guess what? Back to the beginning of the maze and opening the gate we saw at the beginning, which kinda is a full circle and really instills this idea that the player comes back much stronger with much more confidence and ready to combat the rest of the game. Because like I was saying earlier, this specific section of the level was meant to just throw the player into the actual game itself. Anything before the Hedge Maze was basically tutorial central. The Hedge Maze was the real beginning of the game, and once a younger player sees that they're able to just beat this section and move on, I feel like this really instills a good feeling of confidence and just showing the player strength off, which is what a good Metrovania does. It makes you reminisce on when you were weaker by giving you all these upgrades and allowing you to get past the obstacles that you weren't able to previously, which is really awesome. But finishing off the Hedge Maze, we make our way out, and now, if you guys remember from earlier, we have a certain cobweb in the mansion to destroy. So, upon backtracking our way to the mansion, we actually realize that we can breach platforms previously not reachable to us the last time we were in here because we lacked the double jump, and we make it to the top of the mansion's main lobby as a result, which introduces us to a new enemy. And here's where I want to file another complaint about the game. Almost none of the monsters change, and what I mean by this is that while the enemy variety at first seems massively expansive, as you have so many monsters from the original show, and it's really cool once again because all these monsters have unique models, lines, and different attack animations. It's really cool, and it's just really awesome to see all these classic monsters here in 3D. And the thing is that it's kind of lacking, as there's no real difference as when you look at the Headless Spectre, the Zombie, the Werewolf. They all deal the same amount of damage, all have somewhat similar attacks where they lunge out at you, and they can't spot you to save the lives. And like I said, they all have unique models, animations, and voice lines, but the game just gives you an item that just insta-kills nearly all of them. And once again, they really have nothing to set themselves apart aside from their models, which once you beat one area in the game, you kinda lose the fear factor in facing these, as a simple press of the B button eradicates almost all of them. And even for the monsters with a 2-hit mechanic, it'll still end them. The helmet upgrade just pretty much gets rid of any fear you need to have of any of these monsters, which kinda sucks. And while yes, in the future of this game, there is one enemy that you need a certain upgrade to defeat, it kinda doesn't matter when you're able to just beat every enemy in the game pretty much with just one upgrade. Now, my solution to this is to either have certain enemies deal more damage later on you get into game while balancing out the HP to match that, or just scatter the helmet upgrade in a way that you will gradually be able to one-shot most monsters. And that, and just giving more unique traits to the monsters. For example, the zombie will move around slower, but will hit harder. Or maybe the headless specter will just end up attacking about randomly since he can't see anything due to the lack of a head. However, while that might solve one issue with the monsters, there's also another issue with the monsters in this game, and that's their kind of spotting radius, as it's kind of too short, and almost every monster in the game can be avoided by simply walking away from them, or just literally walking 5 feet away from them, and they just won't notice you. They will act like you're not there. And this kind of, once again, is leaving them not only not to be scary, but it also kind of leaves no purpose for the slipper upgrade, as once again that upgrade's main purpose is for you to sneak past the monsters, which is kind of dumb when all I need to do is simply just get out of their line of sight and just run from that point on. Once again, the obvious choice here is to just increase the vision radius of the monsters, which small changes like that would not only better the experience, but make the monsters, once again, feel more alive, more scary, and more unique. Anyway, I've rambled onto that topic for long enough. Getting back on track, here we reach a door that serves a similar purpose to the gate that we saw in the Hedge maze, which is to serve to the player that there is a promising end goal for them to unlock, and as we saw earlier in the Hedge maze, which will also serve as a mini form of fast travel. We also find a monster token being guarded by weird game physics. I mean, I'm not kidding you guys here. It took me like a legitimate small while to get this token, solely due to the fact that whenever you jump on this platform, it does not react properly and ends up acting as if you are already falling despite launching from a solid surface. It is really dumb, and that's actually just mainly, I think, on the physics engine for this game, which, while fantastic at times, leads to stupid things like this. Upon retracing our steps through the entrances of the mansion, we find one of my favorite aspects about the game and about Metrovanias in general, which is the backtracking, because now that we've got this helmet upgrade, we are allowed to access secret passageways and things that we were not able to explore before. For example, if you hit this bookshelf, you'll actually unlock a certain area which is hidden from you, and actually hidden to most players, as I actually did not find this initially when I was growing up. I actually just recently found it as I was replaying the game, and it's just really cool that you're able to just find these little secrets and, as a result, find the collectibles, such as the Scooby snacks and HP items. It's also in this section where we meet a new enemy, which is the Creeper. Yes, that Creeper, where he's actually stronger than the usual enemy, requiring 2 hits from Scooby to take down with the helmet, which would have been an interesting way to amp up the difficulty had it not been for the fact that he just remained stunned for so long that it's damn near impossible to not get a second hit. Like, seriously, if you do not get a second hit in the time it takes him to get back up, yeah, that's just on you. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. You're just bad at the game. But it just kind of feels more annoying for them to be taken out than anything. It's not really like there's more skill required. You just gotta tap the B button twice. And while, yes, this could serve as a good balancing aspect for maybe a child, as an adult, it's just really easy to frame trap these bitches. Moving on through the manor, it really does feel like we're playing through a legitimate original Scooby Doo cartoon episode, as it's just filled with goofy scenarios like sliding on like wet water and hallways that honestly wouldn't look out of place in the original cartoon. And I'm like winging this here, but props to the art and design team for really making it not only a fun and goofy mansion, but really bringing out and resurrecting that old style of Scooby-Doo, because if you look at these levels and you think, yes, this is absolutely a Scooby-Doo level. The art and the aesthetic are just completely there for that, and I just absolutely love the attention to detail to things like that. Not only that, but we discovered tons of new enemies. I mean, much more than we discovered in the maze. I think in the maze, all we really had was Scarecrow, Zombie, and werewolf? I think there's a witch. I'm pretty sure there's a witch. Editor me will tell you if there's a witch. But that's only like 4 new enemies. Meanwhile, here we find the Headless Horseman, the Creeper, Geronimo's Ghost, which, fun fact, the episode he comes from implies that, and claims actually, that Geronimo and his items are thousands of years old, when in reality, the actual Geronimo at that point had only been dead for 60 years as he died in 1909 and was a prisoner of war. So you can't even claim that his ghost has been around for more than like 100 years, much less 1,000. Like, jeez, Velma, you're supposed to be the smart one. Like, that's kind of like a really bad estimate. But, you know, slight nitpicks aside, we meet more enemies, such as the Ghost. Yeah, I mean, the game literally calls him that. It's literally just the bedsheet ghost. And I know, he's the ghost from the original series. It's just, with the textures, he really does look like one of those funny bedsheet ghosts that kids pretend to be. But this is actually a really unique enemy, and I will give props to the design team for this, because they actually don't actively chase the player, and are rather passive, actually, as they are stuck on their respective pathing loops, and they actually can't be harmed by your helmet bash, which really makes them challenging. Normally. Or you can just be like me and take advantage of the iframes the game gives you when you get hit, and just pass by them and say, "See you later, suckers." But after escaping that ghost encounter, and after a fun chase with the creeper, we come to... My god! Professor! My man! Not only do you leave your house dusty, poorly maintained, and with faulty safety equipment, but your house is literally on fire with sections of the floor gone and smoke fuming from them. How has your house burnt down? How does a fire marshal not come to solve this mess? Like, you'd think that the house would not be in a doable or usable state or anything at all. It wouldn't even be here. It wouldn't be here. We would have seen it from the outside already, but you know what? It's a game. What can you do? It's a Scooby Doo game. What can you do? But nitpicks aside, we actually find an interesting development here, as in the upper areas of the house, we actually find that we made a full circle back to the lobby area, and we're not even done with this section like it was in the Hedge maze, which, one, communicates to the player that this area is going to be much, much more grander, and two, holds something else in store compared to the basic ending of the Hedge maze. And after making it through that code red fire hazard that is the upper area of the manor, we come to my personal favorite area of the mansion, which is the outer shell and upper attic. And it is introduced in such a grand way as the area just opens up not only to a new track that's practically a remix of the Mystic Playground theme, which I absolutely love, and not only that, but this area, we're actually introduced to our next upgrade, which is actually an improvement on the slipper upgrade as we gain the Black Knight armor, which makes it so as long as you slowly walk with it, monsters won't notice you, as well as making it so that way when you stand still, you're just simply not targetable. It's basically just, it's not even required really, because it practically does the same as the slipper requirements or upgrades, I'm messing up my words here, but practically does the same thing, but you look cooler during it. And not to mention, it's actually kind of puzzle solving in order to get it, as you need to beat this gargoyle on this platform in order to do so. However, that's easier said than done, because the gargoyle is actually a flying enemy, which makes it hard to hit with your head bash. So it's more of a thing of skill and actually maybe backtracking, because I kind of brute forced this both as a kid and as an adult, which I don't know what that says about me, but you know what? You can get it here if you really, really try. Regardless of my opinions on the armor though, I really gotta praise the game here, because this soul area is just amazing, and really the helmet is there to encourage the player to explore the level more in depth to gain access to that upgrade, which is really awesome, as the level design in this area is super unique, and it plays both like a 2D and a 3D level with how it's laid out with its unique camera angles. But upon beating this section, making our way through the attic and to the final part of the roof's courtyard, we come across a cutscene and it starts playing as we finally meet the guy behind everything, the mastermind.
the infamous Scooby Doo. Allow me to introduce myself. I am the Mastermind. I'm the reason you're here.
You are?
I'm the one who made Professor Graham disappear.
You did?
I'm also the one who's brought back all of your old foes.
But why?
That is a mystery you will never solve. And one more thing. I'm the one who's kidnapped all your friends.
Now, uncreative names aside, and despite how cool he is, he basically tells us everything Holly already told us. Like, I'm not kidding, we learn literally nothing new aside from him being responsible for bringing all of Scooby's old foes back, but I'm pretty sure that at this point we all pretty much knew, or at least theorized by it. Another interesting point to go by as well is that he was actually foreshadowed in the mansion level itself by dozens of paintings that we can see as we go on through the mansion. But getting back to the situation, we find Velma trapped in a cage, as well as before the Mastermind reveals, in a nice rhyming manner I might add, our first boss battle, the Black Knight Ghost. The fight itself is pretty decent, as in order to beat him, all you need to do is press all 4 buttons as he walks right under them, while avoiding the lightning, axes, and a witch. Which, honestly, sounds like a lot, like, it really does, but it's honestly isn't, as the lightning never really moves around quick enough, the axes have a hitbox that is way too forgiving, and the witch was just there, as same as the lightning, her movement speed wasn't fast enough to keep up, much less with Scooby in this gigantic open area. Also, a complaint I have in general with the game is that with all the boss battles, it's the music. Not the actual music itself, because it is an absolute bop, and while they are cheesy and lyrically matching to the tone of Scooby Doo and are excellent callbacks, by the way, I wanted to look up who sang these songs, but I was unable to. It's like a lost thing that I really want to find out, because whoever did sing these songs really nailed the tone and the absolute feel for old Scooby-Doo music, and all of this is really great. But if my problem isn't with the songs themselves, what's my problem with the music? And that's where we come to the weird mixing, and that's the fact that you can't really hear them. You have this absolute banger of a boss theme, and you can't hear it, as rather than the music dominating almost all the other sounds and blasting out, making us feel the tension and the fun of this boss battle, it kinda sounds more like the Mastermind bought a dollar store stereo and placed it at the corner of the battle arena. And of course, just needlessly complaining isn't gonna get me nowhere, so how can we fix this? Well, really the best ways to fix this are pretty obvious, as simply just amp up the music, have the axes have a bigger hitbox, and maybe have him throw them out in more of a spread of an area of just flat out get an extra one. Having 2 axes at once would make this boss battle slightly much better and slightly more challenging, especially if he gets those axes later on you get in the fight. And flat out, just get rid of the witch and double up on the lightning, because for one, the witch makes no sense being here, and it is clear thematically that the boss fight is a lightning theme. And not only would adding more lightning clouds just amp up the challenge, but it would also feel like it would fit the theme of the battle nicely. Overall, I find this fight really fun, and the difficulty makes some amount of sense, as once again, it's a kid's game and this is the first boss battle of the game. So it kind of makes sense that it's somewhat this easy. And after Scooby is able to shockingly defeat the Black Knight, we rescue Velma, as she claims it makes no sense for all the monsters to be here since we already beat them in the past. And since they also knew that all these monsters just were guys in costumes, and yeah, we watched the show, we know that for sure, so how are all these monsters here? And once we help Velma repair her glasses, she all of a sudden sees the creeper despite one not being there, interestingly enough, and she just nopes the fuck out of there, and Scooby doesn't pursue her, weirdly enough. Once again, I understand why, but it slightly doesn't make as much sense. But on the way out, she actually bumps into a crate that shows us an automated message from the missing professor as he gives us our next upgrade, which is the banana-flavored galoshes. And yeah, you heard me right there.
Looks like it's the galoshes. With these, you can walk across any sticky surface and not get stuck. And best of all, they're banana-flavored. Oh, banana. My favorite.
Why these galoshes made to go through mud and other dirty things are banana flavored, I will never know. But I do know, however, that this is the biggest upgrade we've received since the helmet, as it allows us to freely run and jump in the tar hazard, which opens up areas previously not accessible to the player as a result. And the game recognizes this, as in the next room, there's immediately a warp gate, and even more, you have the ability to jump down and reach a previous section of the mansion to backtrack if the player really wants to, which is awesome. I just want to say that this is a great piece of just basic game design. This is alone excellent because it not only allows the player to both continue onward if they want, but it also allows the player to simply just explore the mansion all over again. Not only through the warp gate, but also through the fact that this brings you back to a previous section of the mansion. It is just beautiful game design, and I absolutely love it. I praise it. I didn't realize how cool and good this was as a kid, but it is absolutely amazing. There is also one more note I wanted to make before we leave the mansion, and that's the note of, why didn't we get the Black Armor Knight for beating the Black Knight? Like, it feels really obvious, but for whatever reason, the game didn't want to give you two upgrades at the same time, even when it made sense, and depending on the difficulty they chose for it, could have been worth beating the boss. It just feels really weird, and I mean, maybe the point of the armor was to foreshadow the boss fight ahead of time, but at the same time, I feel like it would have just been better to put it here and maybe make the galoshes something you have to go out of your way for, but then again, that would also cause the issue that the player is forced to backtrack if they don't want to, and it gets really complicated. Like I said, I feel the simplest decision would have just been put maybe the slippers there, as that would have been a slightly more appropriate way to do so, but you know, we're getting into reworking the whole entire game at this point, so you know what, we just work with what we got, and like I said, I haven't been able to interview any of the developers, so I won't know until they, you know, accept my requests. Oh, I actually almost forgot when I was talking about the boss. The Mastermind and the Professor are both voiced by notable actors and Scooby Doo veterans, as the Professor is voiced by Tim Conway, who's a famous actor who cameoed in Season 2 of the new Scooby Doo movies, and freaking Tim Curry is the Mastermind. Yes, that Tim Curry, and he is just as wonderful in the role as you would think he is. And also, I feel the need to add that at this point in time of the game coming out, he would have voiced 3 Scooby-Doo villains in the past few decades, which is pretty cool to me, as that's a really cool achievement all on its own. But to finish off what I think of Mystic Manor as a level, I'd have to say it's fun, claustrophobic, and a really exciting journey throughout the game's main centerpiece. And honestly, unlike the last section, I really don't feel like I have any real complaints, as the level set out what it was likely meant to do, and it achieved it. It really did, and I feel like that the level set out to give you a fun, goofy, and enjoyable classic Scooby-Doo mansion experience, as it really does feel like it was ripped straight out of the silver screen of Scooby Doo Classic, and I really just admire that. The art and direction for this level just absolutely knocked it out of the park, and I completely enjoyed every single section of this level, and honestly, that's just props once again to the design team for this, as they've really made a complete and satisfying level to play through. The only complaint that I really have about this Mystic Manor in general is the degree to which the mansion is falling apart in later levels, as it really does feel a bit extreme, as it is implied by Holly that people did live there earlier in the game. So while I do get it stated that the professor hasn't really done maintenance and taken care of his house in a while, I won't lie, the amount that is shown is just kind of extreme and slightly takes me out of the game. But we can't stay in the manor forever, as we must move on to the next section, as for those of you who remember, there was a certain area in the fishing village that was tar infested that we couldn't jump over as a result. But now that we have the proper equipment, we can finally go fishing and wade through the tar as we move into this next section to be weary, not to be canned. Hey guys, post-editing Sonic here. I am completely done with the editing process at this point, and yeah, this is the credit sequence because this is going to be the first of a multi-parter for this specific video series, or I guess the video game in general. I'm tired, I don't know what I'm saying, but basically, I wanted to have this all out in one part, but as the month got closer and the more I realized I needed a new SSD if I was going to get any work on this video, I realized I had to pretty much dedicate the entire month of October to this one series, which is kind of poetic considering how last year's Halloween video was kind of ruined by this video as well, so I guess it's like poetry, it rhymes. But I mainly just wanted to get this message out to let you guys know that there will be a part later, either in this week or the next week. It depends how long it takes for me to make it, because I still got to edit the next video together, and I still actually got to record audio for that video as well. So we are having a busy week, and I cannot believe I have undertaken this task for you guys. And honestly, I also just deeply want to thank you guys as well, and there is a car for whatever reason at 4:30 a.m. revving it up. But yeah, I just wanted to really thank you guys for the support and the patience, because I know I'm also extremely late on the Back to the Future video. That should have been out a while ago. So yeah, I just really wanted to thank you guys for watching, and be sure to tune in when we get the next part released later on in this month. So thank you guys, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.